The United States flew Haitians camped in a Texas border town back to their homeland Sunday and tried blocking others from crossing the border from Mexico in a massive show of force that signaled the beginning of what could be one of America's swiftest, large-scale expulsions of migrants refugees in decades. In all, U.S. authorities moved to expel many of the more than 12,000 migrants camped around a bridge in Del Rio, Texas, after they crossed in from Mexico. Joining us now is Lisa McClain, Congresswoman from the 10th District. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing well. These images are just sad and frightening. You got men and women and kids crossing the Rio Grande River. They're holding onto ropes, trying to climb up the embankments. U.S. officials finally are in Texas trying to do something about this. How did we get here?
Well, how we got here was cause and effect. When you reverse all of Trump's border policies and you have an open border, it's simple cause and effect. What did you think was going to happen? I mean, we have all the people coming in from Mexico illegally. I mean, right now, currently, we've already caught 1.2 illegal immigrants coming over the border of Mexico. We're on pace to have 2 million illegals into this country by the end of the year. 2 million. I mean, think about this for a second. We've already had 44,000 illegals released into the interior of this country in August. 44. The same August number under the past administration was 17. So when you have an open border policy, what do you think's going to happen? People are going to come, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the situation in Haiti is rough. The economy, the poverty, they've had earthquakes, the violence. You understand why people would make this journey to try and get to a new country, but they make this long journey and then they're here. They try and cross the Rio Grande River. And it's dangerous, and then they're now being turned away. Some flown back, but some right at the border being stopped. What? First of all, why do you think the Biden administration is finally doing anything about this?
I think finally the public outcry is gotten even too much for the Biden administration. And I think, you talk about they're sending the Haitians back. I want to point this out to you. I think the problem with government today is we need, as government officials, to tell the truth, to be transparent, and God forbid, could we mix in a little consistency, please? I mean, we are so void of consistency, it's ridiculous. So I think the Biden administration, this has gotten so out of hand and so overwhelming to the Border Patrol agents, to the people and the residents that live in these border communities. I think we've been screaming for the past 7 months, and finally the administration is starting to take a look at it like, oh my goodness, we might have a crisis. We do. Let's fix it.
So, what do you think the rest of the world currently thinks about the U.S. borders? Do they think they're open, or do they think they're now closed?
Well, it's not a matter of opinion; it's a matter of fact. The rest of the world thinks the borders are completely open because, Kevin, they are. When 2 million people, when we're on pace to have 2 million people enter the country, I think the average American, the average European, the world thinks 2 million people crossing illegally, that's probably an open border.
So what sort of impact does 2 million people illegally coming into the country have on the rest of us?
Well, at some point in time, it is going to affect Americans. It's going to affect Americans in terms of drug trafficking. Look at the numbers. The drugs are way up. Talk to any law enforcement agency. But it's also going to affect us economically because these people are going to get in line with the average American and with the average taxpayer, and it is going to become a drain on the system at some point in time. Not to mention a little bit of terrorism of which we had under control for the past 20 years. Do you think any bad guys are crossing the border? I mean, think about that for a minute. We already know there are, but the average, I want the American people to think, if you have an open border and you're a bad guy, you're a terrorist, how are you coming in? I'm coming in across the Mexican border. This isn't real difficult cause and effect to put together. I mean, it's a simple equation.
Yeah, people get concerned about people coming across with COVID, but there's bigger concerns than that when you consider terrorism.
Well, go back to consistency. We care so much about COVID, as we should. Then if we care so much about COVID, why are we letting 2 million people into this country without any COVID testing? I know if I go on vacation and I come back into this country, I got to be COVID tested. We're letting 2 million people into this country. Are we mandating vaccines for them? Are we mandating COVID tests for them? So again, it goes back to consistency. If we care about COVID, let's act like it. If we don't, then okay. But you have to have a little consistency, for heaven's sakes. I mean, it's very, very simple, and I give everyone an analogy. I have a very open door policy in my home. I believe I have a very warm and welcoming home. However, I actually open the door and vet you in. I don't let just anybody off the street into my home for Sunday dinner. And that's what we're doing at the border right now. Which, again, go ahead.
They've been consistent on trying to undo anything that Trump wanted to do. There's consistency there. Do you think that do you think that they've sort of ignored the pleas of the Texas governor because he's a Republican?
Perhaps. I don't know, but I'll tell you, they've ignored the pleas of the Democratic mayor that is in Del Rio, and he's Democrat. He's sent letters to the Biden administration and has heard nothing. So I'd like to say it's just a Republican thing, but at the end of the day, love Trump or hate Trump, what Trump said is, I'm going to do X, and he followed through with it. I think the frustration with the American people is they need a little consistency. You can't run on being a moderate and then be a complete progressive. Just do what you say, and you're going to do. It's simple. But this is a real crisis, and I think we need to do a couple things. We need to close the border. I mean, we have COVID numbers running rampant, of which I think we all care about. We need to reinstate the catch and release, or put that back so they remain in Mexico. And quite frankly, we need to enforce the laws. Let CBP and ICE do their jobs.
All right, Lisa McClain, we appreciate you checking in today. It certainly is a crisis. There's some force down there at the border. It's not going to be enough to stop the problem, though. Some of these other things that you just mentioned are going to have to take place. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.